That's everyone. Okay. Thank you. Item number 9.
Capital Improvement Project's second quarter report for fiscal year 2015.
Great. Mr. Kelly.
Madam Mayor and council members, Pat Kelly, Assistant Public Works Director, City Engineer. Very pleased to be here to give you a snapshot on the city's capital program, which involves pretty much every city department and fund. As a snapshot, it doesn't include all the work that is going on, but it gives you a good idea of the scope and scale of the effort necessary to maintain and improve the city's significant infrastructure. Here is a photo of just kind of showing the distribution of all the different work around the city. In the next slide, you'll be able to read what's on this slide. But every year, every time I make the presentation, I just like to show where everything's located. It shows the water lines and some of the significant pavement maintenance. So here's a list of the actual project that we worked on. And as you can see, is that, as noted, it's about $5.5 million, a wide variety of projects between streets funds, water, wastewater, funds, including some interesting work that I'll be talking about later regarding the Valverde well. Here's a picture of school zone pedestrian refuge islands this is a picture of Soledad Street. It is mostly grant funded, and it provides installing 15 low-profile mountable pedestrian refuge islands at 9 intersections. And much of the red curb associated with this is part of what was requested as part of the Neighborhood Improvement Task Force on the east side to improve safety and site visibility at intersections. So much of the red curb is independent of the actual construction here. Here's
Actually,
a picture.
Can you go back? So, because it was just brought up earlier today. So, was there one space lost? Is that what I'm seeing here? Because the red curb was already there before?
I don't know exactly at this location. I can get back to you as to what would have been lost at this intersection. But like I had noted, we had requests independent of the civil construction that people were looking for better site visibility at the crosswalks.
Right. I mean, it's kind of even hard on the after photo whether that spot is open or not. I think the angle's different, so it's possible that there was no loss of, but who knows? But yeah, I think it's important to note the red curb was there before. So thank you.
But in totem, we had a loss of 7 spaces, did we not, parking due to these improvements?
I don't know the exact number, but I can get back to you to confirm that.
Okay, I think that's the right number. We'll see.
Okay.
And here is a picture of our routine project that we have in the city regarding accessibility, improving accessibility. We had 15 new access ramps at 10 different intersections funded by the Community Development Block Grant Program. And the locations were reviewed by our city's Access Advisory Committee for providing access corridors that meet the funding criteria for the CDBG or Community Development Block Grants. Here's an exciting picture of a trench for our water remain placement project. And we need to show you something because it is over $4 million. That's a lot of money to be spending on infrastructure, but that's some of the routine infrastructure that we have. In this particular case, we replaced almost 20,000 feet, which is almost, it's a little bit over 1% of the city's water lines. And some of the water lines we replaced were down to 4 inches and some up to 20 inches. However, most of the work was in the network of providing 8 and 12-inch diameter pipes. Part of the work included an experiment that we did. Instead of just providing trenching and replacing the pipe in a trench, we had a trenchless technology we're experimenting with to try to minimize the impact to the community as far as traffic. As you can see, this whole street's closed down, and also to the pavement itself. We learned a lot by that experiment, and we'll be looking for opportunities to apply that as appropriate.
So would you say that was a successful experiment?
Yes, from the perspective that we learned a lot. I think we learned that it was probably not the best application at this location, because what we found is that due by the excavation to provide the trenches, or the big trench is on either side of the work, is that was a significant inconvenience to the public. So where it would be good is that if we had a long straight stretch, and not a whole bunch of intersections, and depending upon the depth and other aspects of the pipe.
So that means we have to shut fewer lanes down in the process of construction?
In the right application,
Right.
yes.
Great, thank you.
And here's a bright spanking new piping at Val Verde Well. This is a well that was drilled many years ago. However, because of the quality of the work of the water, it was not acceptable as a potable water well. So it's been vacant for many years, not used. However, because of the fact that our recycled water system is down, being replaced, we're using we're using potable water for our reclaimed water system, as our reclaimed water system treatment facility is being rebuilt. So taking this, the water from this well, which wasn't acceptable for potable use, it is acceptable for reclaimed use. So essentially this 200 gallons per minute is replacing 200 gallons per minute of potable water. So now, and summarize some of the construction in progress. We have 22 projects, estimated value of over $57 million. And of those 22 projects, we'll be featuring 6. And FYI, we do have a website on the city's website, Public Works Engineering, where you can look online and see where this work is and get more detail regarding it. So here is Punta Gorda Bridge. This provides a new bridge with roadway and lighting throughout the neighborhood at Sycamore Creek. It includes utility and channel capacity improvements. Originally, that channel, it's essentially part of the original 1852 subdivision of the city, for Soledad Street. And that's where the creek ended up being as the city developed. However, over time, it was encroached upon significantly. In fact, we had a encroachment permit for the adjacent trailer park that got it down to 30 feet. And so the capacity of that channel was significantly reduced, as reflected in flooding in 95 and in both January and March. And so this project not only was to replace the bridge with a modern bridge to provide much wider capacity, it also included widening the channel, and as part of widening the channel, we did some significant rehabilitation of the creek itself. And
Madam
it's now
Mayor,
open to traffic.
Mr. Kelly, since you have the photo up, I've heard complaints about the utility pole there, that it's ugly. And is there a way we can talk to Edison about it, camouflaging it or something?
It is a giant pole, and it is at a turn in their transmission system. Very expensive pole. My experience in talking to Edison is that there's no way to really camouflage that thing, and but I can certainly find out and get back to you. But that's the response I've had in the past.
Well, I hear people giggling up here, but I mean, maybe it's something that the new East Side council member will tackle. I'm telling you, I hear complaints about it, and if I can make a phone call, or if we can write a letter, maybe there's something we can do. I mean, they do things to cell phone towers, and there's ways. I would imagine there's something they could do. It certainly looks ugly to me.
Yes, I will investigate and get back to you.
We were just noting that Mr. Ablett's in the back, and Jeff Sheldon may be able to do something about it that could look like their house, so that would be kind of cute. But just a thought,
Thank you.
And here is Mason Street. This is one of the bridges in the waterfront area that this particular project is part of the Lower Mission Creek project. We're doing significant widening of the channel for flood control improvements. And then also as part of when the project is done, there'll be significant creekside improvements too. During the duration of the construction, the bridge is closed, and the completion of the construction will generally coincide with the completion of most of the other improvements in the area. Hopefully the Children's Museum, the MOXIE, the Museum of Exploration and Innovation, along with several hotels, which include the Entrada. Also, it's a site for children with families with children who love big machines. It is a great place to go down and experience drilling of big piles, lots of noise during the day. And here is the other bridge in the area, the Cabrillo Bridge. And this is a picture from our video cam that we have on site, which actually you can have access by going to Public Works Engineering / Cabrillo Bridge. And we have refreshed photos every several minutes. And this shows that we're down to one lane in each direction, working on stage 2, which is moving all the traffic to the southerly side while we now move forward to begin demolition on the south side, rather the north side.
I have to say, I know the summertime will be different, but certainly I've been through there on purpose just to see how the flow would go, and it's not so bad so far. Summertime might be different. I'm sure weekend summertime might be different, but at least right now it's very clean. It's open. It seems to be well circulating, so that's good.
Our traffic engineer, Derek Bailey, is keeping a sharp eye on it and working to keep the flow going as best as possible. And here's some more routine infrastructure maintenance improvements. And here's some picture of pavement out at the airport. This particular picture is of the general aviation ramp. So it's not a runway or a taxiway, but it's also part of the key pavements that the airport needs to keep up, which will be completed this spring. As you can see, none of this is inexpensive. It's over $2 million. However, this is paid for as part of the fees going through the airport. And here is a picture of being in action, of doing a sewer point repair. And this work started in actually September 2014 and is moving well throughout the city based on what our intended scope was. And here we're doing open trench excavation and repairing of 6- and 8-inch pipelines, rehabilitation and replacement. Marina 1 Phase 5. This is one phase of 8 phases. We completed the first 4 phases a couple years ago, and we're doing the waterfront is doing 1 phase a year. This is Phase 5 with 6, 7, and 8 remaining. And what it is, it's replacing of the floats of the individual marinas. Here now I'll go over the projects that are currently in design. Again, a significant amount of work, 46 projects, about $100 million, and I'll be focusing on 10 of them. Also, just remind everybody is that much of this work is available for information on the Public Works Engineering website as to what's happening. These are some of the bridges we've talked about before. This is at De La Guerra and Gutierrez. These projects have a fair amount in common. The bridges are over 100 years old, and they were described in the Lower Mission Creek project. So when we replace them, not only do we replace the bridges, but we also do some of the channel work and rehabilitation of the creek that was described in the Lower Mission Creek project. The Gutierrez Bridge is scheduled to start next year based on our funding program. De La Guerra, we're not so certain. That's probably following 2017. You may have heard that we're funding some of our match on these grant-funded projects with the sale of some of the right-of-way that was needed to acquire some of the prior construction. In particular, we acquired a valuable property with the Mason Street Bridge. When that bridge is done and we sell that property, that sale of that property can be used as our match for these grant-funded projects. So depending upon how the real estate market is going in a couple years, it will pretty much determine what our ability to fund and leverage the construction of these bridges. Quinientos, both of these projects, however, are 100% funded. Anapamu is a structurally deficient bridge over there on the west side on Old Mission Creek. And Quinientos Bridge is a little bit different. Instead of being structurally deficient, as many of our 100-whatever-year-old bridges are, this one is described as being functionally obsolete. And it's functionally obsolete primarily because of the intersection of an adjacent street that tees into Quinientos, which, because of the narrowness of the roadway, creates a sight distance problem at that intersection. So this qualifies for replacement. It needs to be replaced per full AASHTO requirements, which is a little bit wider, which is wider than it is now. So we are challenged to make sure that we can address the interests of the community to make sure that that they feel, even though that their sight distance is improved, that speed has not become an issue for them. So that's a challenge that we're dealing with right now in design. And then here's the great active transportation project. So I'll be going over these shortly. 4 slides. This is the Montecito Street Bridge project. You've already seen much about this, but this will replace the bridge, provide pedestrian and bicycle access across this, including a significant amount of sidewalks and streetlights in the neighborhood. Regarding the Cacique and Soledad pedestrian bridges, I believe presentation was made last week regarding the award of this design, and this will dramatically improve walking and biking access through the neighborhood so people can feel more confident in walking through the neighborhoods. The street will be low volume on traffic because it is a cul-de-sac, which makes it ideal for this idea. Another great project for the ATP is the Las Positas Multipurpose Pathway. Here the limits of work are, here is Ealing's Park, Hendry's Beach, and then here's Las Positas Road up to Modoc and then along Modoc. So this is a path to provide access for peds and bikes along that entire reach. It has some significant challenges as far as being much of the length is adjacent to Arroyo Burro and other sensitive areas. And so we're working collaboratively with community development and Creeks and Parks and Recreation divisions to work out how the city policies can work together to make these dreams of a restored channel and also a pathway become real. Another great project, and it's hard sometimes to get one photo to address all the needs. Here is lack of a sidewalk between Cabrillo down here and up to the railroad tracks, but one of the great parts of this project is the fact that you'll now be able to cross the railroad tracks and provide more sidewalks from Milpas over to Dwight Murphy Park and the zoo. So this would be a great interconnect for the east side neighborhoods, not just to get to Cabrillo, but also another active recreation area, namely Dwight Murphy Park. This is a Measure A grant-funded project that's in design right now, and you can see this is one of the challenges of some of the remaining sidewalk links in town is that there's a reason why there's not a sidewalk here as far as the difficulty of adding a sidewalk after the area has been developed. So here is a summary of all the funding. And in attachment 2 of the Council Gen report have a tabular representation of this information. So on the completed projects funded, to date, much of the construction for this period of time is using water funds, like over almost $5 million of the total almost $8 million. And streets, facilities, and of all that, 10% is grant funded. So here next is just kind of a shot of the anticipation of and history of our completed capital projects. And I just want to emphasize this is the notices of completion filed in a year. So like in 2013, we had a way up to $95 million. Well, 57, almost $60 million of that was the airport. So some of these projects, take many years. So in a couple of years, you'll see another big spike when the bridges get completed. I think shortly, in probably the annual report, I should be able to have another graph that due to another effort we're making to track how much money is expended each month rather than the notice of completion, but the actual expenditures to construction consultants, et cetera. So I think that would be a better measure to get an idea of the activity of capital work.
Mr. Ross?
Here.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was wondering, Mr. Kelly, is there a slide or a report at some point we can get to determine for the public the amount of grant funding involved in this gross number?
This is an attempt to do that, and so
right,
this
but it doesn't
is the
explain.
grants,
Everything
10%.
going forward.
And much of that is leveraging streets projects less than water, which is mostly enterprise rate funded. So it's kind of a complex puzzle to piece together the reflection of the appropriate, 10%. 10% doesn't reflect all of how much grant. The importance of grants. Grants are very important for the streets projects.
Well, that's what I mean. Is typically it's a larger piece of the
Significant
pie
amount.
and maybe a little more readable as well. And all that.
The tabular attachment 4 gives you a better idea of where that grant funding went, so you can see where what programs it really leveraged.
Right, thank you. And I'd like to hand the mayor an all contraire about the traffic around the bridge, because this weekend it was unpassable for a number of minutes. And as I anticipate going forth in the summer, and that little implosion we call the funk zone, I'm wondering about, in terms of traffic, this linear traffic that doesn't really have to do directly with the pier or that part of State Street. If Public Works has any kind of a major detour signage program or some kind of informational relief for people who want to go from east to west or vice versa to avoid that intersection, maybe relieve a little bit of that, because it's easy for people like me that don't think much when we drive and all of a sudden we're there for half an hour or so, as it was over Saturday and Sunday. And I know I'm just anticipating going forward, because we're going to look like this for a couple of years. So I just didn't know if there was any thought about circulation along those lines.
Yes, Councilmember Rouse, is that we have planned for that. It appears that we can plan some more for that and do even more outreach, because it really is easy to, when you're driving around, just to miss that. So we can probably do a lot more advanced signage. And we have some of that. We plan for some of that, but it looks like, yes, we could probably do a lot more. And so we'll look at that. One nice thing, Derek does have a direct relational ability to get onto those traffic signals, and if something really starts jamming up, that he can remotely and using cameras to keep track of how to relieve the traffic. An interactive way to
Au contraire.
help the traffic.
Yes. Okay. You had one more. You had a video, and then we do have a public.
Yes, and so here we have a video that focuses on El Estero treatment plant.
If one were to make a list of things we take for granted, somewhere at the top would be public sanitation. In the early days of the city, it was a subject that raised quite a stink, literally. In fact, up until the 1880s, Santa Barbara's sewer system consisted of a series of open pipes along State Street leading to the ocean. The only thing as bad as their effectiveness was the smell. Residences and businesses not on State Street would simply dispose of their waste on site. The smell and fears of disease had many in the community calling for action. Here's an excerpt from a newspaper editorial in 1876.
The war upon these enemies of life and health is an unending conflict, and if not steadily maintained by the champions of cleanliness, the community will surely someday be given over to the hosts of pollution, perhaps to the ravages of pestilence.
The city was spared the ravages of pestilence by sewers constructed soon thereafter, but the problem was merely shifted offshore, with raw, untreated wastewater simply being pumped directly to the ocean, close to shore. The tactic surprisingly was used until the 1950s.
The solution to pollution was dilution, and often it was just sort of a septic tank system that communities had, and they tried to keep the solids in the tank the best they could and discharge the raw effluent into the ocean.
In 1971, there were some federal regulations that were implemented to help protect the water where waste discharges were going. And it required that people go to a better type of treatment. And so anticipating that, what was going to be regulated and the type of plant that we would need, the city built a plant in 1979 that had something called full secondary treatment, which not only settled the solids out, but then actually went into a further type of treatment to remove more things from the wastewater before all the water went out to the ocean.
Wastewater treatment in our city has come a long way from the days of the open pipe sewer and the glorified septic tank. Today, a state-of-the-art facility utilizing 254 miles of sewer mains treats 6 to 7 million gallons of wastewater every day.
The El Estero treatment plant receives all that wastewater and runs it through a combination of physical, chemical, and biological processes to remove contaminants from the wastewater to a very large degree. We meet all applicable federal and state standards.
It's a complex, highly regulated operation that's online 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. But with much of the infrastructure dating back to the 1970s, the plant is in need of some work.
A lot of the facilities have reached their useful life, and so we're methodically going through the plant and replacing a lot of the systems. And with that, we're actually able to include some more efficient and better technology to improve the treatment process.
In 2012, staff initiated a system-wide upgrade and replacement program going from process area to process area. Work started at the beginning of the line, otherwise known as the headworks.
And that's where we screen out the heavier objects, the larger objects that we don't want going downstream to potentially damage our, mainly our influent pumps. So it screens out things like tree branches, diapers, paper towels, all of that big stuff you don't want going downstream into your treatment.
Last year, El Estero completed a cutting-edge cogeneration project that takes fats, oils, and grease collected from local restaurants and uses them to produce energy.
With the addition of those fats, oil, and grease, the bacteria in the digesters are able to produce more methane gas than they otherwise would, and we're able to boost our biogas production by between 10 and 20%. And with that, we're able to then create more power and better serve our treatment plant to keep our electrical costs down.
The Cogen project not only produces about half the plant's electricity needs, the heat from the process is utilized as well. And by reducing truck trips, the system improves air quality.
Prior to us constructing this facility, Marburg was disposing of those materials or trucking them off-site to other communities far away, such as Bakersfield. So the community is saving in air quality from the standpoint that less materials have to be trucked far away to other communities to dispose of or utilize those wastes.
The next process to be upgraded is tertiary treatment, which produces recycled water.
The old facility was demolished as part of this project, and it's going to be an ultrafiltration, microfiltration facility where we will be treating about 3 million gallons or up to 3 million gallons of wastewater a day to standards that we can use for recycled water.
And what that does is instead of using a potable water for that, we can use something different. Frees up water supplies for, regular potable consumption that people can use. So rather than watering a lawn with a potable water, we can use this recycled water and free that up for someone else to drink.
The tertiary facility is slated to be completed this fall. Looking ahead, the next area of focus will be the secondary process, where microorganisms are used to degrade the waste.
We usually can't meet our turbidity requirements for our recycled water because of our secondary effluent, which feeds the tertiary treatment. So that will be one of the things that it'll be addressing, as well as operational inflexibilities, energy efficiencies, secondary treatment capacity as it pertains to high weather flows.
And as staff strives to increase efficiency and functionality at the plant, they're also working to improve public understanding by offering tours of the facility.
We are trying to educate people about the importance of wastewater treatment and specifically how we perform wastewater treatment here at El Estero. They do their dishes, they flush the toilet, they're taking a shower. That water does go somewhere. And in Santa Barbara, it comes here. So, that can be powerful just enough to know that that stuff gets taken care of.
The tours are given to students from preschool to postdoc with curriculum customized to each age group.
We can say it's treated biologically and they get to see, what is that? Well, it's basically fed to the microorganisms. So, that's powerful for them to understand. It isn't just chemicals doing this. This is just, biology, and we just enhance kind of natural processes here at El Estero, the things that actually happen in natural water bodies.
The staff at El Estero, our champions of cleanliness, don't expect you to understand the biology of wastewater treatment. What they would like you to know is they take this responsibility that is so crucial to our safety and quality of life very seriously.
People don't really know about it or they don't want to know about it, but we do take awful lot of pride in the people proud of the work they do and know how important it is for the health and well-being of the environment and the community.
I think the important thing for our citizens to know is that we're professionals, we're doing our jobs 7, 24, 365 days a year, and we're serving the community at the highest level to make sure that the community's wastewater is treated properly and either reused or disposed of in an appropriate manner.
And thank you. Just like to emphasize again, part of the theme of the video is that we have a motivated staff, and it's also reflected at the beginning of this council meeting where we had people of service of 30, 35 years and enjoying their work, and you can see from, I think, the enthusiasm of running a sewage treatment plant that you can be motivated for public service no matter what that service is. For our, I love the champions of cleanliness that our city TV jumped on and carried through. So that's the end of my presentation. Any questions? I'd be very happy to answer them.
Great. We have a public comment speaker. Why don't we just do that first, then we can get questions and comments all in at once. So Bonnie Raisin.
Good afternoon, Mayor Schneider and City Council people. If the El Estero wastewater plant is infrastructure, it's beautiful. I just wish that our streets and our sidewalks could be considered as important, and albeit they probably are not. But what shocked me when I pulled up, well, first of all, I'm totally opposed to any sort of tax, bonds, whatever you deem necessary for infrastructure improvements in the city of Santa Barbara. And the reason for that is because I've been following this, and with all due respect to the creativity of the Public Works Department, 46 projects in design with an estimated total project cost of $99 million, and I'm thinking, I saw the bridges, and I see the little, I know what ATP, active program enhancements, mean. It means not just a flashing sidewalk, but it means curb improvements, and possibly a more difficult approaches for cars. Anyway, it goes on and on and on. And what I'm saying to you is that along with all of the lovely enhancements to do with roundabouts and bicycles and bicycle transportation and pedestrian, we're still ignoring the basis of what good government is, and that is, visible money for streets. The improvements I saw today, I also saw very bad-looking streets, and it just doesn't connect for me. So there's a lot more to be said on this subject, and I don't know if a study for what the public wants. I think they've told you in workshops that they want their streets and sidewalks repaired, and the existing crosswalks painted, the existing street signs improved. Things that are there that probably pretty inexpensively can be improved upon.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Okay, it's to the council. Mr. Hotchkiss and then Mr. Hart.
Mr. Kelly, I didn't see any mention of the new well in Alameda Park, but that's obviously, you got the great green wall there, so.
Councilmember Hotchkiss, yes, indeed. We are wrapping up the drilling and construction of that. Once you start drilling, you don't stop. And so that's where those sound curtains are up. And we hope to complete that within the next several days. Then we can move on to the next phase of construction.
What's the timeline for that being finished? Do you recall?
I can get that. I don't have it off the top of my head. I'll
just like to know, just for general information. Thank you. I think the sound wall is pretty effective. I haven't heard anything driving by, honestly.
We really want to know is, did you hear anything from your constituents?
Haven't heard that either.
Mr. Hart?
Well, just kind of following up on Mrs. Raisin's comment about how she can see the connection between the water treatment plant, the wastewater treatment plant, and the money that we're spending on that, and that's infrastructure, and that's appropriate. I think it's helpful to understand that the fees that we pay to the wastewater treatment fund are generating enough money to pay for that plant, because we are able to assess those fees to the taxpayers. And basically, without having to go to a vote of the people, we have a cost of construction, and we raise the fees to provide that revenue to meet that need. And we do that annually, and wastewater fees have gone up to accomplish this work, and that system works really well. And on the transportation side, the parallel is the gas tax. And that it used to work the same way, where we would raise the gas tax to provide the revenue necessary to maintain the streets and roads in the condition that people expect. And what's different with transportation funding and the gas tax is that the gas tax hasn't been raised in 20 years. And so that doesn't generate the money to maintain the streets and roads the same way the wastewater fees and the water fees and all the enterprise funds that we're able to control, we're able to raise those fees to generate the money to provide the infrastructure that people expect. But when it comes to roads, that's not the case. We don't control the level of the state or federal gas tax. And so I think that's an important distinction between those two. And since you made that parallel and how important investing in infrastructure for the wastewater treatment plant is, I think it's useful for folks to understand that that's not the case when it comes to transportation and road maintenance.
Mr. White?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A question and then a comment. The question is about the reclaimed water system. How is that my recollection is that we were shooting at June to have that done. Is that right? And where are we?
Councilmember Wright, that is correct. We're focused on completing by June and no later than July. But we're definitely pressing to get that up as soon as possible.
And we're on track so far.
Yes.
Great. Okay. So thank you for that. And I want to just also express an agreement with Ms. Raisin on her comments about this crazy infrastructure program that we have going, where there's wonderful things happening and then these complete gaps in between. And it's been the head scratcher for me now, starting sort of in the beginning of my sixth year on council. And the magic has been those bridges during these years, and it really has been exciting to see from the Cabrillo Bridge to just the Haley Street, Coda, Ortega, these come forward, and it's been done with, I think it's something like 4/5 or even better, 5/6 of the money comes from the federal and outside of our borders. And so we've had to put in a small amount of money to get these things. And then in between are the streets falling apart and getting worse each year. And I just completely agree. Again, Ms. Raisin and I have had the privilege of living our lives here, and all of our lives, and to see that piece of it not being kept up in the quality of so much of our city is really a sad fact. So that's been the reason we've been working on this, at least that I've been impassioned to work on it, and I know that we'll be continuing to do that over this year, and I know Ms. Raisin will continue to participate in it too, and to see how this council is tending to the business of the city and trying to get those streets back into shape that they should be.
Any other questions? Great. The bridges are, as Mr. White was saying, it's really great to see after all these years to finally see things happening one after another. So soon we'll have this whole Lower Mission Creek bridges projects almost done. So that's really very exciting. I know it is for you as well. I don't believe there's a motion needed. We just received the report, so thank you very much. And with that, we'll move on.